All right, guys. Today is the third installment of the NFL record prediction series for all 32 teams. So we began with the Dallas Cowboys, then we went to the New York Giants, and today we're continuing the NFC East with the Philadelphia Eagles. How are the Philly Birds going to perform in the 2020 NFL season? So they have one of the harder schedules in the NFL, and they're coming off a year where they sneaked out a divisional victory, and they made the playoffs over the Dallas Cowboys. But keep in mind that this Philadelphia team was riddled with tons of injuries in the 2019 season. They're getting a ton of people back from injury, and they made some key moves this offseason to put themselves in contention for the division once again. So before we predict every single game on this team's schedule and eventually get to their overall record, I'm going to start off by talking about every single move that they made this offseason. So obviously, you hate to see it, Malcolm Jenkins, an Eagle for life, he left. He went to New Orleans, got a new contract back where he originally played, so he's out of Philadelphia. So who does that leave the Philadelphia Eagles with as a safety? The Eagles signed safety Will Parks. Will Parks, he's a Philly native who spent the first 4 years of his career with the Broncos. He's 25 years old, and he isn't a lock to start opposite Rodney McLeod. But after a multifaceted role in Vic Fangio's secondary, he's primed to at least serve as the Eagles' number 3 safety. Despite just 15 career starts, Parks is considered underrated and a versatile addition, so we'll see if he's good enough to earn a starting job as safety. He's no Minkah Fitzpatrick, so I'm going to have to give that like a C grade, a B. Honestly, it's not the best move, not the best flash, but this next move is huge. The Eagles signed defensive tackle Javon Hargrave, who was a Pittsburgh Steeler. They signed him to a 3-year, $39 million deal. This is a really good signing because it bolsters one of the best, if not the best, defensive lines in the NFL. The Eagles' defensive line is such: Javon Hargrave, Derek Barnett, Fletcher Cox, and Brandon Graham. The best defensive line in the NFL? Question mark. Okay, next move. We all know this happened. They traded nothing. They traded oranges and apples, a 3rd and 5th round pick, for Darius Slay. I don't know why the Detroit Lions traded Darius Slay for these picks. I think it was a horrible move on their end. I guess they think that Jeff Okudah is going to replace Darius Slay, but the Eagles got Darius Slay, and they signed him immediately to a 3-year, $50 million extension. This is a really great move. Obviously, their corners were injured last year, and they were really suffering on the defensive front of the ball due to injuries. So this bolsters their defensive depth, and it gives them a captain on the defense. So their new cornerback room, Darius Slay. Then they got Nicole Roby-Coleman, who's a decent cornerback. Obviously, he was pretty solid for the Rams. So they have 2 good cornerbacks now. And then Avonte Maddox, who he's gotten a lot of time playing because of injuries. Most of this whole entire Philadelphia Eagles roster, their secondary players who are bench players, they have experience now because everyone was injured. So now they had to start last year. So that's a good thing. They have a filled out roster of veterans kind of. So their whole bench knows what they're doing. Jalen Hurts. What do I think of the Jalen Hurts pick? So everyone knows the Eagles in the second round picked Jalen Hurts. There was a ton of good players still on the board. Obviously, a lot of talent comes in the second round, especially in a draft this year, which was so full of talent. I believe that Jalen Hurts, they're going to try and use him similar to Taysom Hill, and it's not a horrible idea because Carson Wentz is kind of injury prone. So I see the reasoning of why they did it, especially with Nick Foles. They don't have a backup quarterback anymore. But was it the right time to draft Jalen Hurts? Could they have gotten a better backup later in the draft? We'll have to see if Jalen Hurts turns out to be a good player. So the Eagles, they're in the season, they're in the market for trading apples and oranges, literally nothing for good players. They traded nothing. They literally swapped 5th round picks, and they got Marquise Goodwin by doing so. So Marquise Goodwin, or Goodwin, whatever, he's not the best, most flashy receiver. He's getting kind of old, but he's similar to Deshaun Jackson. They're both deep downfield threats who can bring some versatility to this Eagles offense and give Carson Wentz an ability to stretch the ball down the field. I like this pickup, especially in a receiving core which was decimated by injury. The Eagles drafted Jalen Reagor in the first round over Justin Jefferson, so this is like a swing for the fences or go home. If Jalen Reagor is not a star, then someone's going to get fired, and I'm all for it because they passed up on Justin Jefferson, who might be more of a safer pick, but Jalen Reagor has extreme speed. So now they have a really good receiving room. Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, Jalen Reagor, and Marquise Goodwin. If those four stay healthy, with Carson Wentz as their quarterback, it's going to be an insane offense. Not to mention Miles Sanders. With Jordan Howard gone, he's going to have a huge workload. In his rookie year, he had 818 rush yards and 500 receiving yards. The receiving part of things is really interesting to me. If he can become like a receiving back as well as a rushing back, that would just be really deadly. The only problem, before we get to the only problem, they have along with their good defensive line, they have a really good offensive line, one of the best in the league. Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks, Isaac Seumalo, and Andre Dillard. It's questionable if Jason Peters is going to return. Doesn't look like it, but that's irrelevant. Now, the weakness of this Eagles team. The only weakness I see in this entire Philadelphia Eagles roster is their linebacker core. So, obviously, they bolstered up their cornerbacks and their defensive line, but their linebackers are Nathan Gary, TJ Edwards, and Duke Riley. Those are three Randys, so someone's going to have to step up to make sure the tight ends don't decimate this team in the middle of the field. And hopefully these linebackers are able to not be the key weakness in this Eagles defense. All right, so I guess we're going to have to look at the Philadelphia Eagles schedule now. Here it is. So week 1, they have to travel to Washington to play the Washington Redskins. Chase Young's going to be there, but like I said, Eagles one of the best offensive lines in the league. I'm going to give the Philadelphia Eagles an easy win week 1 in Washington. Next up, the Eagles play the Los Angeles Rams at home in Philadelphia. I believe that the Eagles will beat the Rams. They were able to beat the Rams when Carson Wentz had a torn ACL, so I believe that they'll easily beat the Rams again. The Rams, I believe they're going to regress this year. Jared Goff didn't look too good last year, but I don't really know. And obviously they got rid of Todd Gurley, so now they don't really have a running back. Cam Akers, is he the guy? I don't know. Probably not. So Eagles start off 2-0. Another easy game for the Philadelphia Eagles, week 3. The Philadelphia Eagles have a home game against the Cincinnati Bengals. So obviously Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, A.J. Green, T. Higgins. The Bengals offense isn't looking too bad. Oh, wait. It's looking horrible. And why is that, you might ask? Their offensive line. The Bengals' offensive line, it's not going to be good. It's going to be like how Phillip Rivers was on the Chargers. Phillip Rivers had the worst offensive line in the league on the Chargers, and he threw a ton of interceptions because he had no time for his receivers to get open. So he was rushed, had to throw a ball, he had to throw it. It was horrible. Bad situation because of a bad offensive line. Joe Mixon's not going to be able to run the ball as well. Philadelphia Eagles defensive line is going to dominate this game. They're going to dominate the ball up front, and the Eagles start off 3-0, and they start off hot. The next game is in San Francisco. They have to travel to play the San Francisco 49ers. I'm giving the Philadelphia Eagles a loss in this game. I do believe that the San Francisco 49ers are going to regress this year. I do think they're going to have a good record and probably make the playoffs. The 49ers will. But I just can't see the Eagles traveling to San Francisco after winning 3 games straight. Like winning 4 games straight is pretty tough, especially to start off a season. So I'm just going to give the 49ers benefit of the doubt in San Francisco and say they beat the San Francisco 49ers. And say they beat the Eagles. So the Eagles start off 3-1. And then week 5, this is one of the most important games of the season. They travel to Pittsburgh to play the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers have the best defense in the NFL. Minka Fitzpatrick, T.J. Watt, Cam Hayward. That team is stacked on defense. But I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers offense is going to be so bad this year. They got Ben Roethlisberger, and I think that's the key weakness in this whole entire team. People are like, he's won Super Bowls. He was an MVP. Yeah, and then he hurt his elbow, which he throws with. When you injure a part of yourself that's like the reason you're making money, it's going to be impossible to bounce back from that. I can't see Ben Roethlisberger having a great season this year. He's lucky he has a really easy schedule, but I think that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be able to outscore the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh, regardless of how good the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is, because Ben Roethlisberger is not going to be able to score against Darius Slay and Nicole Roby-Coleman and the Eagles' defensive line. So the Eagles start off 4-1. Next up, the Philadelphia Eagles play the Baltimore Ravens in Philadelphia. So obviously Lincoln Financial Field gives this team a huge, huge advantage. Philadelphia Eagles fans are some of the most rowdy people in the entire NFL community, and that factors into why I'm giving the Eagles this tough win against the Baltimore Ravens. I think Lamar Jackson is going to have a tough time scrambling because of how quickly the Eagles' defensive line is going to break through. Eagles have the best defensive line in the NFL, regardless of how good any team's offensive line is. They're gonna be putting pressure on any single quarterback in the league, and I think that's going to throw off Lamar Jackson and the way that he plays. I'll give the Philadelphia Eagles this win, and they start off 5-1. Things are looking good for the Eagles. Next up, they play the Giants in Philadelphia. So obviously, I just predicted the Giants' schedule, and like I said in that video, I think the Giants have a really solid offense. They had some injuries last year too. Obviously, Sterling Shepard and Golden Tate. Golden Tate was suspended, but they have a good receiving room. Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate. What we have to see is Daniel Jones is going to be a great quarterback. He looks pretty decent. And then obviously they have Saquon, who's a monster. I believe that the Philadelphia Eagles will beat the Giants in home, and I don't think it will be close. Eagles' defensive line, once again, penetrates. The Giants have a horrible offensive line. Obviously, 4th overall in the draft, they picked an offensive lineman. I think his name was Andrew Thomas or Andrew Jones. So I don't know why they picked an offensive lineman. There was better people on the board at that pick. So hopefully this guy is a stud for the Giants. If not, they wasted a pick. Eagles beat the Giants at home, and now they are 6-1. Next up, they play the Dallas Cowboys in Philadelphia. This game's in Philadelphia, and history has shown that the Eagles and Cowboys usually split with each other, and whatever team has home field advantage usually wins this game. I give the Eagles the win in Lincoln Financial Field against the Dallas Cowboys, and they are 7-1. The Eagles are 7-1 at this point, and things are looking good for them to win the division. Next up, the Eagles travel to New York to play the Giants. They beat the Giants 2 weeks prior. I believe they had a bye at this point, and they have to beat the Giants again. I think that this is going to be a tough game for the Eagles. The Giants have upset potential in this game, but I give the Eagles another win. Coming off of a bye, they're going to be rested. I think that the Eagles are going to beat the Giants in New York, and they're going to sweep the New York Giants in the 2020 season. Eagles 8-1. And then they travel to Cleveland from New York and play the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns are going to be a dumpster fire team this year. Regardless, I just don't think Baker Mayfield's a franchise quarterback. I think he's overhyped. The Browns are always overhyped, not this year. I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think the Browns are going to be a bad team. I think the Eagles are going to be a solid team. So the Eagles are going to beat the Cleveland Browns and advance to 9-1. Wow. Now listen to this. The Eagles are 9-1 at this point, and they're a good team. But listen to this closing stretch. Seattle Seahawks in Philadelphia, Green Bay Packers in Green Bay, New Orleans Saints at home, Cardinals in Arizona, and then Cowboys in Dallas, and then obviously Redskins, but they don't count as a team. So that's a really hard closing stretch, and this is where things get sketchy. Eagles are 9-1 and looking good for the playoffs, but can they continue against these stacked teams? Carson Wentz, obviously, I think he has like a 10-6 record against teams with 10 or more wins. So he plays good against good teams. It's just a matter of how many of these wins can he pull together on this tough stretch. So let's start with the Philadelphia Eagles playing the Seattle Seahawks in Philadelphia. The Eagles played the Seahawks twice in 2019. One of them was in the playoffs. In the playoffs, if Jadeveon Clowney didn't... I got so mad. If he didn't purposely injure Carson Wentz, then the Eagles should have won that game. Not to mention, Josh McCown nearly led a game-ending drive, and then he tore his hamstring. So the Eagles should have won that game in the playoffs. And then also, in the regular season, they almost beat the Seattle Seahawks with an injured roster. So the Philadelphia Eagles went 0-2 against the Seahawks in 2019, but they're going to get the revenge with a healthy roster in 2020. And I think that the Eagles are going to beat the Seattle Seahawks at home. Eagles are 10-1. Next, they played the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay. The Philadelphia Eagles went to Green Bay last year, and one of the upsets of the year for them, they beat the Packers in Green Bay. That was a really interesting thing because the Eagles were coming off a couple of losses. They traveled to Green Bay and upset Aaron Rodgers, but not this year. I think that Aaron Rodgers is going to have the last laugh, and the Green Bay Packers beat the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles 10-2. Next up, Eagles play the Saints in Philadelphia. So 2 years ago, the Eagles should have beat the Saints and maybe advanced to the Super Bowl. Obviously, Nick Foles was in leading a game-winning drive, and then Alshon Jeffrey pass slips through his hands. I have nightmares about that catch, and it was intercepted to end the game, basically. So the Saints beat the Eagles in the playoffs. I hate when the Eagles face the Saints. I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 3, when the Saints decimated the Eagles. It was on Sunday night, and the Saints just obliterated them. I'm giving the Saints the win against Philadelphia, even though it's in Lincoln Financial Field. So that is 2 straight losses for the Eagles, and they are 10-3. 2-game losing streak. Next up, they travel to Arizona to play the Cardinals, and I think this will be a game of the year. Cardinals have such an explosive offense. It's going to be interesting to see because I think that the Eagles are going to have an explosive offense as well. The Eagles definitely have a better advantage on defense. The Cardinals have Patrick Peterson, Chandler Jones, that's about it, and Isaiah Simmons, of course, who they just drafted. So that's basically what their defense is, though. Their defensive line is horrible for the Cardinals, and their offensive line for the Cardinals needs some work too. And for that reason, I give the Eagles the win in Arizona. Plus, the Arizona Cardinals don't have that many loyal fans, so Eagles 11-3. Next up, they traveled to Dallas to play the Cowboys. Like I mentioned earlier, I was going to have the Eagles and Cowboys split just for the benefit of the doubt. I'll give each of those teams the win at their home stadium. So the Eagles lose to the Cowboys in Dallas, and they are 11-4. 11-4, they're looking to maybe get a first seed, maybe, we'll see. And they have to play the Washington Redskins in Philadelphia, and the Eagles will easily beat the Redskins to end the season and will finish their season 12-4. So obviously I predicted the Dallas Cowboys 2 videos ago. Make sure you go check that video out to make sure you see who advances to the playoffs. I already concluded my playoff prediction series, so make sure you check out if the Cowboys, Eagles, which one of those teams make the playoffs, how far they advance, if they get byes, if not. But yeah, you're going to go check out that video. It's in a playoff prediction playlist. So thanks for watching. Next up, we're going to be predicting the Washington Redskins. It's going to be sketchy, so make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and like this video.